everyone, it's Bonnie and welcome back to my kitchen. I'm so excited to have you guys here today. It is gonna be a very fun episode because I will be using my own recipe. Today we will be making what we call ensaymada, which is basically brioche that is topped with butter and cheese, and it's gonna be so delicious. It is a Filipino treat that we eat breakfast, second breakfast, afternoon with tea or coffee. Me being so deep into bread making, I want to explore more of the Filipino treats that I grew up with. And so this is going to be a very fun episode. For a full list of ingredients, check out the description box below. But what I have here is a full cup or 1 cup of milk. I have 3 cold eggs. I have 4 cups plus 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. I have here 1/4 cup of sugar with 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And I also will be using 1.5 teaspoons of yeast. So one of the things that I will be doing here is I will be heating up the milk. And if you haven't checked it out yet, I do have a chocolate vodka recipe, and I will be using the same principle here. The idea here is to make a tangjang. 1/3 of a cup will go back into the bowl, and the rest of the 2/3 of a cup, we will be putting 1/4 of a cup of the whole portion of the all-purpose flour. Now it's important to note that before we add the flour, to make sure that the saucepan itself is off the heat. It will gelatinize very fast. And so just to make sure that you mix it with a whisk. No worries whatsoever if there are any lumps in the mixture at all. It will be kneaded by our handy dandy stand mixer. Another thing that I would like to add is I do have Filipino cheddar cheese here. I'm not gonna name any brands. This you'd be able to find at an Asian grocery store. It is a very mild cheddar cheese. It's milder than a lot of the cheddar cheese that I find in American grocery stores. And it's a little bit, it tends to be just on a slightly sweeter side. I also have butter that is 12 tablespoons that I have already taken out for it to be room temp so that it'll be easy mixing for tomorrow. This particular recipe is best made the night before because I like to ferment the dough in the fridge overnight. It helps develop better taste, better texture, and just overall helps yield a very delicious pillowy dough that doesn't really require a lot of kneading. So my milk has come to temp. And now I'm putting it back on the stove, but not on top of the direct heat. I'm gonna put this on the mixing bowl. And with the rest of the milk, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out 1/4 of a cup of the flour and put it in the saucepan. And while off the heat, mix this in. And I am staying off the heat until everything is fully incorporated in. And so I'm gonna put this back on the heat. And again, try to achieve almost like a mashed potato texture. And so this is the kind of texture that we wanted to achieve. And so to help it cool down much faster as well, I will be adding cold 1/4 cup of water in here. Give it a little mix. So just to make sure that we don't get scrambled eggs, we want to make sure that this mixture is completely at room temperature. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stick it in the fridge to speed up the process for it to cool down completely. Give it a little bit of mix, make sure that the temperature all around is distributed distributed, but yeah, I'm gonna stick it in the fridge. So this has completely cooled down. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add the eggs. Give this a little mix to help break it down. And to this, I'm gonna add the rest of the flour and also the 1.5 teaspoons of yeast. And I'm just skipping the proofing part at this point. One thing I did forget to add was ube. What would be a Filipino ensaymada without ube? Now, you can definitely have it plain like this. However, I do love the contrast of ube and cheese. So I will be adding 1 tablespoon of, this is almost out, but I will be adding 1 tablespoon of the ube extract in this. And for those of you who are watching, you add it with the rest of the wet ingredients before you add the flour. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be adding the 1/4 of a cup of the sugar and 1.5 teaspoons of the salt while this is running. Looking at indicators rather than just telling you how much time this needs, I would say you would wanna look at a dough that looks very smooth. When you tilt the head of your stand mixer, it just pulls down on its own. It would be like a really good indicator. Usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes. However, it really depends on your dough, the temperature in the room, and just overall like how long it takes for your particular dough to achieve that particular result. You also want to make sure you give your dough a good scrape on the sides every now and then, just to make sure that it's all kneading properly. So this is looking quite smoother than before I added the sugar and the salt. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add half of the butter. Make sure that it's fully incorporated first before I add in the rest. So the butter has completely incorporated into the dough. I'm gonna give this about 12 to 15 minutes of more kneading time, and then just give the bowl a few scrapes. Okay, and so the dough is pulling down by itself back onto the bowl. So that's one of the indicators that we want to achieve. What I do have prepared here is a bowl greased with butter. Transfer it to this bowl right here and cover this and put it in the fridge to do an overnight rice, and it should be ready to go in the morning. The dough has risen in the fridge and has pretty much tripled in size, I would say. What I have here is I have 12 tablespoons of butter. I have the vanilla. I also have powdered sugar, which we'll be using for the butter. We'll set these aside. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take care of this dough first. I do have a 9 by 13 pan right here that I have buttered up. I will be dividing this dough into 12. Punch the dough down a bit to knock out some of the gases that have built. Yep, punch, punch, punch. Yeah, punch, punch, punch. Hi. Now what we're gonna do here is you can definitely use a weighing scale to have them all even, or you can pretty much just eyeball it. But I'm going to use a scale for the sake of this video. Now, a traditional Filipino ensaymada, they do have molds that they use to bake it in. I don't have those. If you do, you can definitely use them. And I'll divide the rest of them.
Tea.
Is it a cheese? Five, six, seven, eight. Yeah. Perfect. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Alrighty. So I'm just going to form these into a ball. Flatten them like this. And then almost forming kind of like a garlic shape bulb. Like that. And then we roll it just so the seams would close together. And so you cup it. You don't necessarily push it down or anything. You just move it with this part of your palm. Alrighty. And I'm going to do this for the rest of all these buns. Now, there are other ways to style this as well. You could roll it out into like a tiny log and then shape it into a spiral. Hi. After I'm done shaping all of these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this rest and proof for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's best if you take a picture of this now, and then after an hour and a half or 2 hours, you get to see how much of it has risen, and it would look a little bit more snug in here. But we're also going to do an indicator test, which is going to be the poke test to see if it's ready to pop in the oven. But before I do that, I'm actually gonna flatten this just a little bit, because once it rises in the oven, and I do this a lot with the burger buns that I make, but I just want them a little bit flat so that it doesn't dome too much in the oven when it bakes, which helps me to put the butter on. But I'll just flatten these just a little bit. But yeah, this is ready to be covered and go for proofing. All right, so while that's proofing, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna prepare the butter that's gonna go on top of the ensaymada. I do have 12 tablespoons of butter here, and I'm gonna put half a cup of powdered sugar. Now to this, I'm also gonna add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I don't really want a strong vanilla flavor in here because I do want the bread itself and combined with the butter and the cheese to just shine. But I definitely don't want the butter to be bland either. And you can definitely use a handheld mixer for this. Pikachu! Hi! This is definitely perfect. I'm gonna set this aside and let me show you guys what I did with the cheese. I grated my cheese, totally up to you how you want it grated, if you want it bigger sizes, but I just have about a cup and a half or so of just grated cheese. It really just depends on how cheesy you want it. I definitely like mine to have a little bit more of the butter and the cheese. Hi. Just because we are having a plain ensaymada.
Hi.
Hi, baby. You want to say hi? Spoon. So at this time, I do have my oven preheating to 350. These have doubled in size and they did pass the poke test. What I have here is foil that I just lightly buttered. I'm gonna bake the first 15 minutes with the foil on top just to trap the steam in. And then once the 15-minute mark hits, then I'm gonna bake this for another 15 to 20 minutes for it to just nicely brown on top. Has a few seconds, but it's definitely smelling good in here. All right. So this is done baking and it's looking beautiful. It needs to rest and cool completely before I put on the butter. So this has cooled down completely. I am ready to assemble my ensaymada. I have my butter to like a really, really smooth consistency. I would say about a tablespoon or a couple in each bun. Doesn't have to be exact. And these don't have to be perfect either, because it'll be covered in cheese. And the reason why we want to have this butter to this consistency rather than being melted is that we want the cheese to stick. All right. And now to add the cheese. Pat it down ever so gently so that cheese actually sticks. And I definitely kept the cheese cold because since it was finely grated, I don't want it to melt in between my fingers. Maybe just a little bit more. Alrighty. Alright, and here it is. Look at that. Now we gotta try one. Alrighty, let's pick this corner piece right here. Scary moment. Would you look at that? Alright, it's definitely really soft. Let's bite into it. The contrast of the sweet butter with the mildly salty cheese is absolute perfection. One more bite. Want to give this a bite?
Sure. I love you. It's good.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so too. I think it's...
I'm on lunch, so I'm gonna lunch it up.
Lunch it up. All right, well, there you have it. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just so pillowy. The methods that we used, although it was, I would say, labor intensive and just a long time of kneading the dough, doing the fermentation in the fridge, the overnight one, I think it really helped develop the flavor, the texture of the ensaymada. It's just perfect with the butter and the cheese topping for it. I would say this is a Filipino version of a cinnamon roll. Americans have their cinnamon roll, Filipinos have their ensaymada. Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And also make sure that the notifications are on so when I upload new videos, you are notified. Enjoy your ensaymada with a cup of coffee or tea. I'll see you guys next time.